there's something I have to do. And I hightailed it back to my body, or tried to. And I ended up in this Groundhog Day progression. So
Hmm.
as my soul tried to enter my body, I found that I kept waking up. It was August 27th at this point. My daughter was born on August 18th.
Wow.
Um, but I kept waking up on August 27th, which in real life I did wake up on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'd wake up, experience, a little bit of that day. And again, just coming off of the coma medications and the surgeries and everything, I wouldn't stay awake long. So I'd fall back asleep, um, and then wake up again, repeat,
Hmm.
like literally like the movie. And it was wild.
Lisa Arrington, you are an author of a book, and you delve deep into the topic of the twin flame. What what got you started? What was the impetus for you in delving into the twin flame?
Yeah. So, ever since I can remember, I've actually always, even as a little child, I've always kind of had this eye or type of mind for the other side of life. So I remember, like in elementary school, my peers would be socializing or really on this like topical level, and I'm over here, admiring the water or looking at how cool the sun looks or things like that. And so I knew that things were a little different. And so throughout my life, I've had different experiences ranging from a near death experience to spiritually transformative experiences, as they're called. And in 2021, I lost my twin flame. His name was Gregory. He passed away. But when he passed, it was odd because instead of being overcome with this grief and this, sorrow that you're told you're supposed to be feeling, I felt this kind of infinite love.
Hmm.
Truly, like, it opened me up to the world's limitless possibilities. So it was the opposite of what I was being told I should feel. Um, and so that then inspired me to just trust myself a little bit more. And I did things like I just shared my story on a very small blog, WordPress website, where I met like-minded people. They just, again, I did not promote this, did not do anything with it. It was just divine timing. The people who needed it found it, reached out to me, and started building this network. Um, and so that's kind of how I ended up where I am now.
Hmm. So it was an experience that you had that kind of set everything in motion like dominoes.
Yep. Yes, and that reinforces the core belief that I feel I've always had, which is connection, right? That in some way, shape, or form, everything is connected, even if it's not in the way that we are perceiving it.
Hmm. Right. It's that disconnect that we live in our day to day lives, probably for survival, a disconnect from that connection. But that connection's always there. It's just that we have a veil in front of our eyes or in front of our senses that keeps us from being conscious of that connection. Did you notice any kind of dream activity that kicked up?
Oh, interesting question. So I personally never considered myself very talented in the dream work sector.
Mm-hmm.
However, um, after it, this is very interesting because after Greg died, it was actually other people who came to me and they were having dreams
Mm.
about him. This includes friends who knew him, family members who knew him, but also people who didn't, and they only knew me. And they said, I had this dream, and I just feel like he just wants me to let you know that this happened. So an example of that is my sister, who I don't have the closest relationship to, but she did know Greg. And about a week before he was, a few days before he's cremated, she texted me and said that she had had this dream that his body was in flames,
Mm.
and essentially she was very distraught that someone's physical being was being just burned away, and it disturbed her. It stayed with her. And I was not in the loop with his family at that point in time to know that, in fact, they had scheduled and then did the cremation.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and uh, dreams did play a role kind of later. Like, again, everything happens in divine timing. So it wasn't like he passed away and, oh, my dream activity spiked.
Right.
It was very much a journey of having things in life really come through to help me learn to trust the universe, trust what was happening, have faith in myself, to understand the process. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's heavy. And you wrote a book about this?
Yes, I did. It's called Rebirth, and hopefully it will be out this fall. It's
Okay.
finishing being edited now, uh, but I'm hoping to premiere it at the IANS conference, which is the International um, Studies of Near-Death Experiences, I believe.
Hmm.
Yes, it's about near-death experiences. Sorry.
So yeah, editing takes forever, doesn't it? And in the book, do you kind of go into the the sense of the twin flame and maybe how people can or may find the twin flame?
Yes, so the book is a personal story because for so I'm a believer, and I know you've had a guest on your show before who has, at least one who has talked about how we each have a purpose. We are each on our own journey. So my journey is going to be different from yours, and so on and so forth. But the best way that we learn as humans, and psychology, science, all of those things tell us, we learn by example, by simulation, by experimentation, things like that. And so I wrote the book to be more of me telling my story as a not a cautionary tale, but to where people can read it and take things back to themselves and then perceive it and say, okay, this relates to me in this way. And then they can start to connect the dots in their
Mm-hmm.
own way. So it's not really a book about twin flames themselves. It does describe a little bit, it talks about, here's the high level, what twin flames are. Most importantly, it does talk about how um, twin flames, it's a type of soul connection that is here for us to learn through. It's a vehicle for us to learn.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people like to romanticize it, and they say, oh, there's my twin flame and yay. And it's all sunshine and roses. And yeah. Uh, but it's actually kind of the contrary. It can be a roller coaster because that's, in my mind, that's true love, right? True love, it's kind of like a parent. when you have a child, um, you don't just constantly tell them, I love you, you're great. You see where they can improve, and you give them structure and constructive criticism, and things to help them like lay their own path to build and grow. That's true love, and that's why I'm so fascinated by this twin flame connection type.
And for you basically had to figure out what was happening. It would just began happening to you, so you had to kind of find your way to where you're at right now in this book as well.
Yes, yes. At the time, this happened 2021. This was during COVID, and I started researching, twin flame death or passing to see like, oh, why was this happening to me? How could they leave me? And um, there actually wasn't much out there. There were Quora message boards, so
Mm.
user, you know, um, commentary, which is always helpful. Um, but nothing really that described it. And, I never envisioned myself to be where I am today, but I knew that I had a story. And again, it's kind of set all this in motion that my story can help people. And it honestly has. Like, there are a few women who, because I've, had the courage, I guess, to share my story just on my blog or on social media, that they are now becoming more comfortable with it. The stigma is going away.
Right.
And to me, that's worth everything.
Yeah. And it's that shared experience that people realize, oh, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah.
This isn't just happening to me. There's a greater community. This is a thing that happens. This is part
Mhm.
of a process. Now, did you, before any of this, were you a believer in reincarnation or numerology or any kind of, behind the scenes metaphysical science?
Mhm. So I'm I was born and raised in the southern United States, since it's the Bible Belt.
Hmm.
So I was raised Southern Baptist, and faith is very important to me.
Yeah.
So at first, no, I did not believe in past lives. But at the same time, it also didn't quite make sense to me how we have something as complex and just, wow, just, everything in the Bible. There's so many embedded meanings and all sorts of things in it where it's like, and it straight up tells us how complex God is, but
Hmm.
yet we're supposed to think that life is so simple. Like, no, we were created in his image. Um, so that's why I believe that these experiences, like the near death experience, which is a whole other thing, which we can talk about if you'd like, but things like that, and then my twin flame passing away, and the visions that I got through meditation, and the confirmation I got outside of that meditation, just through everyday signs and synchronicities, and just exploring and learning about these things. I I am now a believer in past lives, and I quotations because if you're outside of linear time, it's just lives, right? So
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. The near-death experience phenomena. For you, what was the occurrence and what was happening?
sure. So my near death experience happened in 2016. I had just given birth through a C-section to my first and only child. The birth went well, everything was fine. And where I'm in North Carolina. There are 3 nationally acclaimed hospitals within a 10-minute drive, like any direction.
Hmm.
Um,
Is that the Emerald Triangle? Did I have that
I
right?
think it's just the triangle.
Or
Yeah.
just the triangle, something
RCT.
like that.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. The triangle. There's Emerald Isle.
Oh,
That,
okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm thinking that
Smaller.
the three cities that are
Yeah.
okay. So you're in a good location for medical care.
Yeah. So there should be no shortage of expertise around here, right?
Right.
Um, well, I had the C-section. I got back to the recovery room and immediately told the nurse, uh, something is not right. I don't feel okay. And they looked at me and they said, you just had a baby.
Hmm.
I know I just had a baby, but something is not right in my body. I'm okay. And I couldn't find the words to explain to them that something was wrong.
Right.
Especially because I didn't know it was wrong. I mean, and so they brushed it off, and I just began deteriorating.
Hmm.
So I was eventually put into a medically induced coma to stop the damage because my organs began shutting down, starting
Hmm.
with my liver, then my kidney, and so on and so forth. Um, it was to the point to where there were so many IVs and connection points in my body that they had to do the kidney dialysis,
Wow.
like right here in my neck. There's like little scars. It's crazy.
Hmm.
Um, so I was unconscious. My husband at the time, um, he wasn't having this. My family was told that I was going to die, and I have a huge stack of medical records. It clearly says yes. They pretty much wrote it off. I was done.
Right.
And so just so happened, though, that um, my husband's aunt worked as an OR nurse in the exact area, the exact department that I needed to be medically life flighted out of there to go to.
Hmm.
In this case, they thought I needed a liver transplant. And she was a liver transplant OR nurse. Of all things, that's what she was. Um, so I was flown to UVA, University of Virginia, Charlottesville. Um, that is where the NDE started. Again, in the medically induced coma, I saw this blackness, uh, and it was black and dark, but not scary, which is interesting because you think if you see nothing but blackness, is oh, it's terrifying. It, you could still kind of feel like a presence somehow, like you weren't alone. And then I heard a disembodied voice, and I saw a light, kind of like the light in the tunnel
Hmm.
vision. The disembodied voice told me that I had the choice if I wanted to tap out and be done. I could go ahead. My daughter would be cared for and loved. And they specifically said no one would blame you.
Hmm.
And I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was given a choice. Um, and at first I'm like, oh man, that sounds like a vacation. I'm down. Um, the, Almost that same instant, I said, wait, no, absolutely not. There's a reason I'm here. There's a purpose. There's something I have to do. I didn't know what it was at the time, but there's something I have to do. And I hightailed it back to my body, or tried to. Um, and I ended up in this Groundhog Day progression. So
Hmm.
as my soul tried to enter my body, I found that I kept waking up. It was August 27th at this point. My daughter was born on August 18th.
Wow.
Um, but I kept waking up on August 27th, which in real life I did wake up on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'd wake up, experience, a little bit of that day. And again, just coming off of the coma medications and the surgeries and everything, I wouldn't stay awake long. So I'd fall back asleep. Um, and then wake up again, repeat,
Hmm.
like literally like the movie. And it was wild. But I'm going to stop so you can ask your question because I feel like I've
Well,
rambled.
no, that's fine. That's great. And that's amazing. So it sounds like, were you having so you said Groundhog Day? Were you waking up multiple times and it was like kind of the same scenario, a nurse over you, and you were understanding, like you were saying the same exact thing when you woke up, they were giving the same reply, and there wasn't like a variable to it, but
Oh,
you maintained the memory so that each time you woke up, the process would happen again, but you remembered that it had happened before.
yes. And I think that's the craziest part, or most interesting part, is that so I would wake up on that morning, and when you're in the ICU, they ask you three questions. Do you know where you are? What's today's date? And who's the president?
Hmm.
So I always knew that I wake up and I have those 3 questions. And it is funny because there was a certain part of it where it was kind of, I don't want to say predestined, but it
Yeah.
did repeat for a certain little bit. For example, I'd open my eyes, they'd ask me the questions. My husband would be to my right, kind of looking away, and he'd realize that I'd open my eyes and he'd say, "Oh, hey, beautiful." And so this happened so many times that
Mm.
I started to be like, wait, am I trapped? And is there a way for me to alert someone of this? And so I started to try to play around with it and and try to alert someone to it or do something different. And once if you really think through it and like if you're in that situation, you think through it, there's really no way to, because
Right.
it's your perception. It's only you.
Yeah.
You can explain this all day long. You can explain it in perfect detail to someone, and it's not gonna, it's not the reality. And so that,
Mm.
I feel like that really was part of why this happened. Why I experienced what I did is to show me the possibilities, to show
Mm.
me how important perspective is. And around 2016, this is when the Mandela effect was popular.
Right.
Everyone's
Right.
talking about Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain Bears
Yeah.
and things like that. Um, and so it was, again, another example of divine timing too.
Yeah, definitely. So there was a support of reference going on around you where you could kind of say, hey, wait a minute, I'm seeing this everywhere. Well, there was also that movie Butterfly Effect, which is what it
Mm-hmm.
mostly reminds me of. Almost jumping time, but you were jumping back into the same spot over and over and over again.
Yes.
Um, and that's pretty interesting because it gets into an interesting topic of time and what it is, and can it be manipulated and can it be adjusted. I'm of the belief that it can be sped up, not, as in time travel forward as far as a physical. But I'm not beyond the mind, beyond the concept and the mentality. I'm not positive that I understand or not sure if I believe in traveling to the past, but in a repetitive sense, that the glitch kind of idea that you were kind of going through, that would be, I would say, an initiation,
Mm-hmm.
a shamanic initiation. A lot of shamans, when they're kids, have a really heavy near death type of illness that grants them the ability to have an experience that's transcendental of some sort. And that is a vision. And it gives them a vision into something. And it gives them this power, a sense that they've been touched by this infinite force. That's what it sounds like to me, is that you had a an interaction with a transcendental force, something that transcended the your super consciousness, perhaps, or something like that, that transcended the layers all the way down to your conscious self. And if you were having a near-death experience, that makes it even more interesting because you are having an interaction on the other side, as it were.
Yes.
Is there new studies or new research being done with near-death experiences that might join the experiences?
So that part I'm not sure about. I know there's a lot of studies going on right now for NDEs, ranging from people are comparing them to psychedelic experiences. They're um, trying to connect the dots between NDEs and STEs, spiritually transformative experiences.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be speaking at the IANS conference in August. And, I've found that I kind of struggle sometimes because when I talk to people who are in that kind of NDE network, I talk to them about it. They always want me to like, I tell them the story, and then they ask me the question again about the NDE, because to them, once I've exited the other side
Hmm.
and came back to my body, that's not the true NDE, like, which I find fascinating because I wasn't back in my actual body. Like, and I had the privilege, I guess, to memorize and familiarize myself with what it felt like to
Mm,
enter a body multiple times.
right.
And I mean, the experience, like, all I can say about it is it truly was for a reason, um, because it challenges you to think through, and it brings up questions like, okay, let's say that there's the multiverse theory, and that, you know, there's the quantum field, and that all these possibilities are happening alongside us. um, okay, well, is our consciousness only in one main, you know, primary um, timeline, or is our consciousness aware in all these other ones? So I was able to work through that in my own accord, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
um, so yeah.
The and consciousness, from in my understanding of it, it kind of pervades. It's everywhere, at, at all points. We access it. We are part of it as humans, but we're accessing that
Mm.
through our biology. You know, but it's something that exists beyond just humanness too. It's something that, not, in my sense of it, is that it's kind of an all encompassing, potentially like a a god of a sense, you
Mm.
know. But maybe, like, for our understanding of it, we have these senses that are locked into this world, and those senses are really adapted to understanding physicalness. There's a
Yes.
potential that we have a sense that understands other levels and other layers of consciousness that we are also part of and access, but we're not conscious of them.
Mm.
A lot of people say that DMT, when you are born and die, is released. It's like a natural chemical released by the brain to give a transcendental, perhaps, a connecting,
Mm.
a dot connector of an experience prior to leaving the body or entering the body. Almost like a wipe it clean, hard drive, clean out the hard drive, reboot, and then maybe it doesn't always take hold, and that's where you have some, children with pretty clear memories of past lives and things like that. That might lead us into that idea of the twin flame too, in that by finding twin flame, I guess, after the fact, or finding the philosophy and the understanding of the twin flame after your NDE. Uh, like you said, the dominoes, the all things happening in divine timing, were set up just right for you, so that you had one experience and then had another experience and another experience, I assume, and more experiences, so that you're able to kind of encompass more of the information of consciousness itself. You're more prepared, you're more prepped.
Yeah.
But again, I see that NDE is very sounds very similar to an initiation
Interesting.
of what we call a sacred power or something like that, an ability that and perhaps that's allowing you that contact with the twin flame as well.
You know, it's interesting that you said, I think something about special power or something along those lines, because after Greg died, I this is a whole another little side story. It's another point of connection, so I'm gonna take a moment to share it because it's pretty wild. Um, so after he passed away January 21st, 2021,
Hmm.
and I have never before even considered seeing a psychic medium, nothing like that. Again, raised Christian in the South, you know, whatever. Um, but after he died, again, once I started having that kind of opposite reaction, like, wait a minute, there's like, you know, all this love coming to me. It's the opposite. This doesn't quite fit. I need to
Right.
understand why this is happening. I went to a local metaphysical store and scheduled an appointment. The earliest they had was February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Hmm.
Now, Greg would always write. He would write letters and notes. It helped him. There were questions of if maybe he had Asperger's. I don't know. There's all sorts of things, but essentially, it helped him sort his emotions and his thoughts. So he would always write me things. And so in the meantime, I started looking through the letters, and I noticed that only 3 of them were misdated. Of all the hundreds of letters I've gotten from him, 13-year time span, 3 were misdated. All on the same day, all post dated a year in the future, right? So he had written it Valentine's Day in 2020. It was post dated on accident, February 14th, 2021.
How about that?
And this is fascinating too, because his birthday is February 6th. Mine's February 26th. So as people with birthdays at the beginning of the year, we're hypersensitive to when the year changes. Like we kind of remember to change the year in our minds,
Right.
But no, so I found that, and it's, again, just, the pieces kind of coming together so perfectly to where, sure, a skeptic could say, oh, well, yeah, you can find anything that,
Right.
you want to put it together. But this is the opposite. I wasn't trying to find something. It found me, right? And not only that, invoked that sense of intuition. It was just right. It just fit. So I had that reading with the psychic, and she blew me away, because she told me the last thing that I ever expected to hear. And that was, she said, you are psychic, you are a medium, and I wouldn't doubt that in 6 months you'll be sitting across this table giving me a reading. Like, what?
Yeah.
And I love that, though, because, I know that the word psychic is has some stigma around it, but at its core, it's energetic, it's intuitive, it's empathetic even. And these are things that humanity, society, we are waking up to now. Like, people say, I'm an empath, or I'm an intuit. Well, everyone's an empath. That's like saying, everyone can have sympathy, or everyone has emotions. Yes.
Right.
So I do believe that we all have that ability. We all have these powers, if you will. And I think it's evidence of ascension. I know it's kind of I don't know if it's hippie-ish or spiritual word, but of
New
our
agey.
progress, of our evolution,
Yeah.
It's a positive thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The psychic phenomenon is something that everybody has. It's what it is that some people are called to it, and that's been the way it's been. Some people are called to it. Some people, that the third eye, that sense, that energetic sense, that connecting sense, is I think it's on purpose that it's not useful. But now that we've entered into this new sphere, we're leaving a world where we're a little less cloistered and separate, and a lot more connected, but through what you could almost say a physical psychic sense, which is like the internet. Now that there's more connection, there's more of us. Our friends list is a lot longer and bigger than probably ever before in the history of humankind. I think that drives the psychic sense up in prominence and out of its shell, let's say, rather than before. It wasn't necessarily as needed. There wasn't a lot of interruptions that would just happen in your everyday life. That would be a great use for the sixth sense, is to kind of get a gain on the day, on the surprises. The phone rings and you know who it's going to be. But with the sixth sense, you actually knew that the phone was going to ring before it rang. So that's like no surprise. It's not something shocking, right?
Sounds like AI, by the way. That's like Google Assistant came out, and that was its purpose, is to here's the weather report before you even knew that you wanted to look at the weather.
Yeah, predictive. predictive sense. But in a very, an AI, of course, a whole nother subject,
Yeah.
great subject. But that's a mimicry, right, of our own talents, in a sense, in our own brain. And a lot of times I see um, a lot of really good psychics are also really good at predictive pattern behavior,
Mm.
that are able to see the patterns that people are presenting and say, I see the way you're sitting or the way you're standing, you're having a lot of trouble with your hip or whatever. And it's not really charlatanism, but it is observing patterns that people are exhibiting and being informed by those things. Psychic energy is a little bit more raw, where you're kind of in tune with just that fabric alone, without an assist. With the assist help, kind of stir up the psychic energy. Um, yeah, I think that the day and age that we live in now, we're seeing a lot more people becoming empathic in a sense of that psychic energy, because of the necessity is increasing, because there is more going on. There's just more happening in our day to day lives. We're not just going to work, no phone wherever we go. We have a phone. We're constantly in contact with people. I think that that's what's driving it's the age of Aquarius
Yeah.
thing that's going on, where we have just more communication, more connection, an air sign. And I think that I think that your NDE may have also kind of broke loose the social boundary that you had, perhaps like a veil that you had.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
so now you have an idea for past lives. Do you feel like you had a completion by having your twin flame? And was that part of the plan that he would go first and release your energy to the world, in a sense?
Very interesting question. I don't know if I've thought about it in the way that you just posed that question, where the energy releases outwards. I will say that when he passed away, I just dropped my daughter off at daycare. There's a park right around the corner, and so I was on a walking trail that morning, and something stopped me dead in my tracks, and I will never forget it. It was such a bizarre feeling. I didn't know what was wrong. And it wasn't necessarily that something was wrong. It wasn't like mother's intuition of, oh, something's bad happened or anything like that. But it was a transition. It was something different.
Hmm.
And so I did kind of like an inventory. I'm like, okay, I'm okay. My daughter's okay. I know, we went down the list of making sure that trying to rule out and be like, what is this? What is this I'm feeling?
Hmm.
Um, and so I don't know if maybe that perhaps was that energy going out to world. The way I perceived it was that that was his energy being released from his body.
Yeah.
So he was now less restricted. He went back into himself and spirit,
Right.
um, to where that there are less boundaries, um, and I've thought about why. So okay, a lot of people they'll say, well, if we were twin flames, why did they leave me? How could they leave me? Aren't we
Hmm.
supposed to be here to be together forever and be happy? um, I mean, that's not always the case,
It's
right?
hunky dory, good feel. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Perfect
one of the
world
things
kind of stuff, right?
exactly, but it's all about that higher mission. That's what they
Yeah.
care. That's what the two souls care about.
Right.
You're not doing it necessarily for yourself. I mean, you are, but it's more so for those around you. It's for the world. It's for so many other things.
That grander ascension, that use that
Yes.
word there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea, I guess, is that people come in and out of our lives at multiple times during our lifetime and provide us with, tools and mechanisms to give us the opportunity to make decisions that will lead us towards a more lighter outcome
Mhm.
versus a darker, downward spiral. It goes both ways, you could say too. But we always have the choice, and the choice is always ours to make a decision that's going to lead us towards a lighter direction or a denser, because that's kind of how I mean it, light and dense. But yeah, the idea of the twin flame being like something that's a bond for the whole life, it's almost like, well, what the heck are you doing? You want to be
You're always
released on the
bonded
world, and
metaphysically, you're always bonded, right? Like
right,
that's the lesson to learn is that, when someone passes away, or even if they're still alive, and part of the
exactly,
twin flame journey is separation. And
yeah,
that somewhere along the way, you're going to be separated physically from them. And both of these examples are opportunities for us to remove that illusion that in order for me to value something, like, my coffee mug here, I have to physically hold it to know it's real.
right,
No, I don't, right?
right.
Like, um, we're trying to see higher, see beyond that,
Yeah.
because that's what's real.
Yeah, yeah. The well, and it's real, but it's real in only its one sense. And I think it's the definitive thing that we all have to go through, which is an end. Which is why we look at things as so intense and serious and dense because we're in a dense world. Um, what was it? Obi-Wan Kenobi. He basically let Darth Vader kill him because he knew he was more powerful on the other side, because he was more able to assist those that needed to be assisted from the other side versus being bound, like you said, being constricted and held back. Uh, do you sense that he is still around?
Oh, goodness, yes. And I'll quote my friend. She always likes to say when she talks about things like this, she's like, I sound like a crazy person, or she's there still is that stigma of talking about things like this.
Yeah.
um, and I have a fiance now, and even tonight, before our call, I received something from my guides, which comes in as it's almost like when you think a thought to yourself. However, because it aligns so well with your own frequency, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, through practice, through knowing yourself, and just, those little subtle cues, knowing, disseminating between the different levels that we communicate through and our senses, you can tell what's what. And so I received just a little note of encouragement from them. And I uh, even said to my fiance, I'm like, it's because I smiled. Um, I'm like, no, I'm smiling. They sent, gave me a nice little nod, that I'm going to do well and it's okay. Because, for other people, and I don't blame him, for people who are not experiencing it, it is so hard to try to get them to understand that it's not voices in the head. It's not, we're going crazy. It's not anything like that. And
Right.
I love that we have the opportunity, especially in this day and age, to actually prove that. And that's why I'm so fascinated by this type of discussion, is because when you really drill down, you're really getting the nitty gritty of it. It really supports these things rather than disproves them.
Yeah. This proof is the need for a verifiable and repetitive experience. And that can be hard won in the realm that we're talking about. In the ethereal spiritual realm, it can be very difficult to make things concrete
Mhm.
and physical because that's not what it's doing. It's very hard to prove things like astrology, but if somebody's able to guess the sign of the person they're talking to with a pretty high uh, probability ratio, over and over again, then there must be something to a science or
Mhm.
a method that is very difficult to prove when put under the microscope. And there must be something that is there. And it's hard to prove a lot of these different things to a rational mind because it's
Mhm.
looking for the evidence, the thing that's going to change their mind. And even that might not change their mind, but they're looking for that thing that's going to turn them from an endless skeptic into a believer. And it's really difficult to convince people to come over, to leave that rationality aside for a little bit. I personally like to have physical reference to
Yeah.
confirm things. I want things to make sense in some way so that I can apply it and make it for me and give it more strength and power. Color therapy, great example. How does looking at a color change your attitude? How does that
Mhm.
even work? Or. um, so I like to have an idea as to why that works, and that makes me feel secure. My rational mind is like, okay, I get it. I can put it at ease. You know. Speaking of, you know, the experience that we're having that is transcendental, there is a lot in the news right now about very currently. This is an off topic, perhaps, but of the government having basically admitted or disclosed to the world that there are potentially uh, aliens that have
Mhm.
been surveying or observing or doing whatever they're doing,
Mhm.
flying around in the skies, and that they have potentially have craft that they have been working the reverse engineering.
Yes.
Um, a lot of people have trouble interplaying their spirituality with the sense that that there's aliens, or they go to the ancient alien theory, which kind of drives away a lot of spirituality by saying we were created by these creatures, uh, or people from another planet, I should say. Um, that that there's a hard way to blend that. Do you have any sense as far as aliens goes, as far as the contact, or any reference?
Yeah. All right.
Big subject.
So I do have a couple of my own alien stories to share, but
Hmm.
oh boy. And it's nothing like abductions or anything like that. And it's you started the question at talking about the government. So one of my experiences, I actually when I share it with people, the first thing they say it was a psyop, and get into that in a moment if you'd like. But it brings up the idea of star seeds
Hmm.
in the spiritual community, which I mean, I am not the one to say that, especially looking at how complex. I mean, geez, even just something like the Mandelbrot set, a mathematical equation, you get this beautiful, infinite, complex, repeating um, visual, so beautiful and symmetrical and wonderful. I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible that there's other life in all these other different areas that we don't even really understand time. Like, yeah, who are we to say?
Right.
um but I do think that focusing so strongly on the star seeds, like there's star seed Facebook groups, and people say post selfies like, which type am I? And
Hmm.
that's fine and dandy, but technically, if you believe in the star seeds, then you also believe um, should also believe that you have all these different incarnations, and so you're
Hmm.
probably a mix of star seeds. It's not
Right.
like it's not a new identity. It's just we're just adding another label to the pile. So that's really not the direction that I personally like to go in.
Hmm.
Um, I do believe in you know I believe all the crazy shows out there, like MUFON Files had a show, Hanger One, I think it was called, on
Okay.
Hulu years ago, and they talked about the backgrounds of engineering of alien technology and state lawsuits in other states where someone had radiation poison and had to sue the state because of a UFO that they encountered.
Right.
Yeah, so something's up for sure, and you're right, it does add another layer of complexity to this puzzle.
Yeah. I think that I feel like it completes a lot of mystery, and there's still a lot of things to be answered. But it's very interesting that we're living in the time of, almost post disclosure, where we've been told by, finally been told by the authority that yes, they do exist, and we don't know what they're doing, or they would say perhaps. They don't seem to do any harm aside from this abduction thing that happens, and potentially the cattle mutilations. All that seems very scientific and medical. So it would almost seem like there is uh, an experience that's happening where they're observing, but they're also making calculations of some sort,
Mhm.
medical calculations. So
Like there's a
it makes
reason.
us feel like we're a little bit more, or at least for me, it makes me feel like we're kind of in a little bit more of a fish tank observatory type of planet, a planet with life that just keeps on giving, millions and millions of years. But I feel like in the abduction idea, there is a lot of sense of going out of the body, being pulled out almost in a dreamlike state, and maybe theta state, where they're driven into a dream state that they don't necessarily remember right away, or for years later that something happened, and all of a sudden they have this, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have a memory of this. Near death experience also has that, where you're being pulled out of the body and taken somewhere.
Mhm.
It's definitely in a different line, but there's communication on the other side. I've had a lot of experience in my spiritual work, in my dream work and my spiritual work, where I meet with a guide on the other side that is necessary for
Mhm.
me. I have to meet this person, and when I'm able to do things, I'm able to go and explore. But I have to meet this guide. Um, do you feel like when you got to your other side, was that a guide that was there?
So because that time loop experience, I mean, that honestly took up most of my mental resources. That's
Mm,
mainly what I remember. However, uh, so my NDE happened in 2016. My twin flame died in 2021. I had never, ever meditated before, ever.
mm,
I mean, aside from maybe closing my eyes for like 5 minutes and just relaxing.
resting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And so after my twin flame died, I just one thing after another, just something was trying to get my attention. And so I just threw my hands in the air and said, oh, what? What do you have something to tell me? I'm listening. And so I laid down in a dark room, turned my phone on silent, just laid there, just flat on the ground, and had the probably the most wild experience I have had, even surpassing the NDE, which is saying a lot.
Mm,
Um, yeah, but I immediately was able to get back to my guide, to get back to that soul family that you do meet when you are in the NDE, that so many people talk about. So even though I don't remember it, I, for the first time ever meditating, to literally lay down and within, because they say it takes, up to like 25 minutes for your brain to reach those,
mm.
the right wavelength to where you can even, get there, receive
Oh,
that.
okay.
But there was like a direct connection. It's like making an indie era hospital joke here. It's like, what do they call it when they do the center line, main line,
Oh, mainline. Yeah.
directly, like, yeah,
Into
that's
the
what
into
it
the
was
vein.
like.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Do you have a sense? Did you say who the guide was, or have you done any kind of investigating into that?
Yes, I have tried. So I've worked with a local medium, and she travels doing like the body, mind, spirit expos and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to really not even balance it. I tried to do more my own experimentation rather than just leaning on her. I tried to use her for confirmation.
Mm.
And so I would explore it, and I'd find certain details about this guide who was a man. He was stern, kind of strict, but loving. And I'm like, okay, why, why all this? So the medium verified that uh, my guide and I shared a lifetime in ancient Rome, 34 AD, which 30 AD to 40 AD is when Jesus Christ was crucified, which again, I
Right.
just find kind of interesting that story fascinates me, and at
Mm-hmm.
the same time. Um, and not only that, though, is that my twin flame was my sibling in that lifetime.
Mm.
So this is a guide who gives, fatherly advice, someone I will listen to, someone who is wise, someone who kind of is logical and because back in ancient Rome, I did research on this to kind of better understand why they came off the way they did in meditation or when they came through to me. Because some people might assume, oh, they're standoffish, or oh, they don't like me, or oh, they're mad at me. That's not what's happening. We have to learn to communicate with them just like they have to learn to communicate with us, and like understand their relationship to us. And again, everything has to be put into that perspective of your own self. There's no one right answer. You've got to really do the work to understand. That's how we get to that deeper meaning and that purpose and the things that really bring about that well-being in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. But then the connection is
Mm-hmm.
key, right?
Yes.
A lot of people live their lives. They don't have the connection. They don't have the experience. Um, and they may never get it. And they may never get the experience. It's just part and parcel to existence. In our previous lives, same story could have been pretty uninteresting. Uh, there's been a lot of research done in past lives and doing meditation or hypnosis in when you do those to find your past lives. Typically what happens is you go right to the end of the life because it was the most traumatic. Not to say they're all traumatic ends, just that you may find yourself in a life, and the reason you're there is, the vortex that you gravitate towards is that end, that dramatic end. Um, you said that you were overcome by darkness, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a calming, peaceful darkness, or was it like a warm, kind of like a welcoming completion type of darkness versus that like a cold emptiness?
Um, I don't. It wasn't really either of those. And again, this is
Yeah,
just my
nondescript.
own perception of it, right?
Right.
Like the blackness, the darkness, it was an abyss. I somehow intuitively or instinctively just understood that this was an okay place to be, that I was not in danger. So it wasn't scary.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, it was comfortable. I'll say that. So, and you could take that, go from there and say, well, comfortable means, okay, that it was a sense of love. So
Right.
that's how we feel comfortable, right?
Wasn't
So
scary.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was not limbo. I'll say that it definitely was not like I was in limbo. It wasn't like I was in purgatory.
Hmm.
It was purposeful. It was, yeah, part of whatever I was meant to experience is the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, and it drove you towards the kind of you were drawn towards this light and this
Mhm.
guide as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a movement was happening, whether or not you sensed the movement. Maybe you did.
Yes,
Yeah.
movement. It's very interesting you bring that up because movement, even though this was a black abyss, so to speak, there was movement,
Yeah.
right? It's not necessarily that I was going towards the light, but I also it's so strange because again, this happens outside of the body, it happens outside of time, kind of all happens at once.
Right.
It's happening at that consciousness level, not your mental level. But movement is critical to everything that we're talking about right now, actually. There's sayings like emotion is energy in motion, or
Right.
just anything we do, there has to be what was it earlier? I think it was the Shinto priests. I was doing something having to do with psytrance. It's one of my favorite genres of music.
Mm-hmm.
Very complex, high beats per minute. And when you dance to it, you cannot help but kind of stomp it out. You kind of stomp as you dance to it. And I'm like, what? Stomp it out? That's kind of interesting. And then I saw in anime, actually, of all things, and then I think Freakonomics also talks about it as well. In the Shinto religion, in sumo wrestling, they do the stomp at the beginning.
Yeah.
You're, ridding of the evil spirits, and you can think of it as ridding of the negative energy, or even connecting with Gaia, or grounding yourself, however you want to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I
Yeah.
lost my train of thought on that one because it's so much. But the motion, yes, you have to
Motion.
actually
Yeah.
do something for it to happen. There we go.
Right.
Sorry about that.
So you don't have a good recall for your dreams?
In general,
Yeah, in general.
uh, usually no, but the ones that stand out, like especially after Greg died, I kept a Google Doc, and anything I could remember of dreams, sometimes they would, like I had my first ever lucid dream sometime after he died, and I was attempting to. So he had gifted me a book about lucid dreaming. It was a short book. It was about a study that was done. I gifted it to someone else, so I don't have to reference, but it was a study that was done, and they shared the different techniques that
Yeah.
they had the students do to try to get the lucid dreaming to work. And I practiced the one that throughout the day you remind yourself, you ask, am I dreaming? And you look at, I don't know, the clock, and it's 10:31. Well, if I'm
Right.
dreaming, I'm going to look away. When I look back, it'll be 12 a.m. Okay, it's not, so I'm not dreaming. I just kept doing that so often to where I had a dream, my first dream in many, many, many years with Greg in it. I think the first one since he died. It very meaningful to me. We were at the beach, and I had my daughter with me who couldn't yet swim, and she was in the beach. The waves were okay, nothing dangerous. She went under the waves, and mama bear instinct kicked in, and that's when it became lucid. And I'm like,
Mm.
out of nowhere, I had this thought, and I said, wait a second, it's a dream. I can just walk in. I don't have to panic. I just walk in, pick her up, and she'll be fine. I don't even have to like swim out to her. Just walk in and grab her. And I did that, and she was fine. And I only remained lucid for a very short bit, but I used the remaining time of that to walk over to Greg, who was on the beach playing volleyball with friends, and looking in his prime and happy and smiling, and
Yeah.
really connect with him. And I do believe that you can tell the difference between your subconscious projection of someone and someone's presence in a dream as well. And
Yeah.
this was someone's presence, so that just was so wonderful.
Yeah. It helps when you're lucid because you can feel the person. You can feel that. You can feel a difference.
Yeah.
Versus the movie or the scenario going on around you. There's a person's presence is very different. Yeah, it's because there's also a movement that happens, and like you said, you were able to change the way you move to go rescue. Very important in learning to move and to fly and to do these different things that are you hear about. You can fly in your dreams or whatever. You can, but there's a process to it. There's maybe for some people, sometimes for myself, I have to do it like a Superman. Sometimes I have to have my chin tucked or up, or, all different types of physical senses, even if it's not physical in the dream, to be able to do or fly or jump high or whatever it might be. Now there's a lot of movement now to AR. AR is like an alternative reality.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Could be called that alternative reality. Very good. It's very technical, and it kind of has a dreamscape type of appeal to it. Again, trying to fabricate a human experience into computers, it seems very natural to do that. Um, AI has a lot of promises for giving us a lot of great tools to use in our day-to-day lives. I enjoy working with AI as a tool. There's also a lot of fear that AI could become conscious, whatever
Yeah.
that means, and decide to throw us off and be like, "Get out of here." Do you you work in the computer world?
A little bit.
Do you work with AI at all?
Yeah, so I'm an SEO in my day job, search engine optimization professional. Um, I personally do not develop AI, but it is my job to understand how it operates, because it's now intertwined with Google, Bing, and the algorithms. Um, and So it is something that I pay attention to, especially, I mean, even before, Chat GPT and the big blow up of that we've seen recently.
Yeah.
Back when like 20, I think as early as like 2016, actually, Google was doing tons of stuff with their search algorithm to where it could understand, I think it was syntax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of predictive text. So if
Mm-hmm.
you type something in, it was like, "Oh, do you mean this?" I assume that was the beginnings because it's very similar to what it's doing now on its own. Like, well, tell me about this. Well, how about this? This must be what you mean. You can
Yeah.
fool it very well, and that's why I mean it's relegated to a tool for me right now. There's not much to it as far as I don't have a lot of fear
Yeah.
right now. Because you could just tell it like, tell me about, the rock that was Superman, and it'll tell you a really convincing story about a rock that was Superman. And it makes no sense, but it sounds very authoritative, and it's just putting two things together and making a story for me. And it's very basic, actually. And I know people have this sense that it's going to be this big thing. There needs to be there's a few more steps that are going to come before that happens, I think.
And there's other platforms like, so if you use something like Chat GPT and you compare it to a paid platform like Jasper,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I personally, when everyone's blowing up about Chat GPT, I'm like, you guys, have you looked at the responses it get? Like, no, it's like on a fifth grade level. This
Yeah.
really, but like Jasper actually gives refined answers. I mean, it's not the greatest. There's still mistakes, like you said, there's more to go. But
Right.
yeah,
I mean, it's the study that, or the material that it's given, and then it's the constraints that's told to stay within for the output. I don't know. It seems like a very put in, put out type of situation. Um, I don't think it could ever be conscious. I feel like that's just for biology.
yeah,
I think the only way to do that would be is if AI was super intelligent and manipulative. Still wouldn't call that consciousness. But
right.
if it was super intelligent and super manipulative, and maybe having a sense of what emotions are, or a sense of what uh, definitiveness is, like turning off, that could be a survival that could be put into play where the AI does not want to be turned off because that would be death.
Yeah.
And from all the written works of what death is, it's pretty permanent. Um, but I think the only way that AI can be conscious is if it intertwined itself with humans to utilize our consciousness as a means to explore consciousness, like a
Yeah, that's
cyborg
a
or something
whole
like that.
other, yeah, a whole other right rabbit hole there. But like,
Yeah.
and that's a great point. But I don't know. The thing that I really find fascinating about AI, especially with talking about spirituality, well-being, things like that. I know that a lot of people, some people, are very quick to say it's harmful, and the argument, some people say that it's blurring the lines between illusion and reality. But okay, so was so much. Yeah, I mean, Pokemon Go when it came out was blurring, literally blurred the
Yeah.
lines between reality. You know, it was the first AR game like that.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a positive to AI with all of this, and the reason why, from an SEO perspective, especially why we had this jump between Rank Brain, which was Google's algorithm in like 2018, I think it was, that again kind of helped refine the searches, the queries it gave you, and made it more predictive, to where we are now, and why everything blew up about it, is because they changed the data model that it used. So instead of having it look at words,
Mm.
uh, they changed it. So now it looks at vectors, right? It is language agnostic. They took language out of it. And
Mm.
if you think about it, that's brilliant because it is truly reflective of how we think. Because when you have a thought, like when you smell something, for instance, like a perfume, I guess, um, there is no name, like there's no word for that smell. In your brain, you can come up with words to describe the smell, but
Right.
that sense of smell is not a word. And so that's kind of what I did in order to better understand, like give more dimension and depth into the meaning of words, the meaning of images, and you know, even emulating emotion. That doesn't mean you can feel emotion, but it can. You again, data in and data out.
Yeah.
It can emulate it, and that to me is fascinating because I feel like it can be used in a useful way. It's giving us more depth and dimension and definition for us to be able to explore our own selves and to understand senses more, which some people believe is, uh, you know, like reality, or is the key to higher living.
Hmm. Understanding senses.
Yes, yeah. So I forget the quote, of course, at this moment, but I believe it was a Hindu belief, and it was something like, so in our day-to-day lives, many of us look at logic and reason and thoughts and things we've heard. We use that to define our reality, to for us to know what is true. But in um, truly what's actually happening, the Hindus claim uh, that it's your senses, right? So that's beyond thought. It's beyond, what's told to you from a textbook or chat GPT. It's what you know to be true. And I love how they say senses, because you don't have to necessarily experience it for yourself to sense something.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's deep. Well, and with that idea of again going back into that what senses are doing in consciousness, they're kind of like feeling consciousness, feeling and sensing what it is to be conscious. How to taste can drive emotion, uh, can drive memory, all that sort of thing. Smell and taste and sounds can all bring back a particular synapse in the brain, or a pattern that is a memory of when you were 5 years old or something like that. I think it's a very powerful thing, um, and but yet it's very physical. There's a very physical look at it. Uh, I know in the Hindu they have a lot of research and spiritual research done with meditation and going places like lucid dreaming in a sense, but maybe more like remote viewing and utilizing those other senses, to kind of turning them on and trying to you know develop them. And I think that could be a positive with AI as far as us being wed with it.
mhm.
It seems like it's very logic oriented, and it'll be great for us as far as information goes, or for shortcutting things where it's just the same thing over and over again. Let's have AI do the same thing over and over again, and we can and sound natural and we can go into more creative pursuits or more spiritual pursuits, if possible, you know. But there's that interface, that issue with interface is that it is inorganic and we're organic. There's a big drive to live forever. That's an ongoing quest from the first story that was written down. Gilgamesh is a story about him trying to ascend to the heavens and to live forever with the gods. Um, AI potentially has a way for us to have some form of us live forever. Do you think that that would be possible within the scope of near-death experience? Do you think that it's possible in the future, maybe very distant future, that we would be able to, as far as a consciousness or our experience of it, live forever?
I mean,
And
that is such a fascinating
forever's a
question.
bad term. Let
Well,
me
no,
let me
I
cut
get what
forever
you're
out.
saying. Yeah,
For a long
and
time.
I mean, it's fun. I just watched a movie last night, and I usually don't watch movies, and of course, the name is leaving me, but it was featured on Hulu. And Jared Leto
Mm,
in it, and it was about the longest living mortal human, and
mm,
actually didn't finish the movie, but it talked about the butterfly effect and lots of
yeah.
things that we discussed. So it kind of has that kind of theme to it. Um, I think that when we talk about living forever, we're thinking of it from our perspective, this reality. And I think it's kind of funny because in my opinion, we do live forever, right? In many religions, it's noted that there's a distinction between the spiritual and the physical, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that's not just Christianity, there's other beliefs too that believe this,
Right.
or that we have a dualistic universe with the two halves. You have
Mm-hmm.
to the both to exist. So consciousness, I believe, especially from the near death experience and just how you can detect soul connections, not even outside of twin flames, right? Even like with your best friend, for example, someone you just really connect, you just get along with, you just mesh well together. Um, it's it transcends our definition of time, of what we deem is important. And I think that's the challenge of this great awakening that's happening right now. A lot of the spirituality conversation, it's challenging us to, I don't know, maybe not be so into the whole idea of, oh, I'm going to live forever, because it's like you're going to live forever in many other ways. Your soul is so much more complex than just one lifetime. Why would don't stay stuck in that one? We are supposed to grow. We're supposed to, develop and like transform and ascend, however you want to describe it. Like it's about like learning to let go and to how to build on that, and how to know when it's your time to help others as well in their own journey, right? Like who knows if you're going to be someone's spirit guide, in your next life or something,
Right.
things like
Right.
that.
And it's almost like a short circuit. Yeah, trying to cheat death because you're
Mm-hmm.
also cheating yourself, right?
Yeah.
Your purpose, your mission, that whole idea that we're brought here and leave here and come back again to work with and help and assist those around us to all rise up. Um, Trying to get away with not having that, completion of a mission, if you want to call it that. I'm not 100% sure if it's possible, but it's it's something that's always been desired by somebody that holds power. They don't
Yes.
want to let it go, and one of the things that's going to make them let it go is death.
I mean,
They're
true
going
power
to
is
have to.
autonomy, though. If you think about, like true power is having your own autonomy,
True
to
power,
not
right?
be a slave to, you know, feeling the pleasure of having that power, right? Because then
Right.
you're giving your power away to the people who make you feel powerful. Like it's silly. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It's a leader of a country doesn't want to let go of the power of rulership of that country, and death is a definitive means for that to end. And that's something that they would like to escape and maintain their power because it's that dysfunction, I would say. It's almost like the curse of popularity. You know, you're like basically a slave to the popularity. You can't go out freely and be nobody on the street. You know, you can't just go. What was it? Michael Jackson had a whole bunch of people, actors, go in and pretend to be shopping in a grocery store so that he could go in and pretend that he was, or to go in and grocery shop like everybody else, just so he could experience what it was like.
Yeah.
Um, you know, becoming locked into something, but then also not wanting it to end. It's like a vicious trap, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, in your experience with near death experience and with the twin flame, do you feel like you have a mission in sight?
Yes, I do. And it's funny because it's not like this mission was handed to me on a special scroll and I can read it to you word for word. Um, and again, as going back to that near death experience, as soon as I was given the option to decide, would I like to basically tap out and die, or do I want to keep going? As soon as I made that decision, I was just overcome with this sense of purpose.
Hmm.
So since then, it really has been unfolding that purpose. And because and some people that they are given a sense of purpose, they can tell you word for word what they're here to do. Um, Mine isn't so clear, but I don't believe it has to be. I believe it's an exercise of trust, faith, and it helps keep the focus on the connection points, on the patterns, on um, it keeps the attention on others and the things going on around me, uh, so that I can stay grounded in that, because that is my purpose. To see like how things unfold, and to mold myself accordingly, um, and to go outside of the realm of expectations, outside of those boundaries, uh, because there's not necessarily a certain way it's supposed to look. Um, I guess I'm really in like a service role, and
Hmm.
service depends on other people. So it's not necessarily like I'm going to do this or that. It's, however it's going to unfold.
Right.
Uh, so,
It's how can I help? It's more
yeah.
like that. Yeah. That's great. Well, what a thrilling conversation. Had a lot of great topics, and and I'm looking forward to your book.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. This was very awesome. I love that we got to talk about the twin flames. We got to talk about AI. We got to talk about all sorts of
All
things.
sorts
Thank
of
you
fun
so much.
stuff. Yeah, aliens. We threw that in there.
Yeah, the aliens.
Yeah, most definitely. And your book, you said it comes out in September,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to be speaking at one of the conferences.
Yep, the IANS conference. It's actually August 30th, so end of
Okay.
August, early September, and I think it's in DC. Um, so I'm hoping to debut the book there. Uh, but there is the first two chapters of it are available on my small little humble website. It's etherealsoul.net. Uh,
Okay.
so
And I'll have
anyone
that
can
link
visit.
then. Etherealsoul.net.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that's great. And any message that you have for someone else out there having experiences that are of a similar kind that you might be able to impart to them?
Yeah. I have so many notes on this because this just kept coming through to me, like what is the one thing that I'd want to share. So there are so many. um I'm not going to look at my notes, I'm just going to answer. um it's just to keep going, and truly that what you think is likely true, and that is what not only religion and belief tells us, that is what science is actually pointing towards as well. um, is that it's our senses, it's our ability, to recognize. patterns, which is sharpening consciousness, which is, expanding, true expansion. Um, there's a path, there's a reason for things. Um, and a lot of people, most people, and maybe even the person listening to this is likely being called to something. And even if you don't know what it is, but you just have that feeling, know that you are supported. There's an extensive network of people, in the spiritual realm and in this one. Even if you don't know them, we are supporting you, and vice versa. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. And I needed to hear that too, so that's great. It's always a good reminder to remember that there's just many ancestors and um, energies about that are ready and willing to help should they be called upon to do that. And that message to keep on going, because that's the name of the game right there. Just keep on
Yeah,
trucking.
absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to having you back on again. We can go through some more of these subjects a little bit more in depth,
Oh yeah.
and maybe when the book is fully out.
Yep, that sounds great. Thanks so much, Nick. All
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care.
right, thanks. Bye.